Hey, David Bristol here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Toto. And of course, Toto is led by the mighty Steve Lukather, and I'm a huge Steve Lukather fan. And I know even back when I was in high school, I used to get teased, by some of my metalhead friends, which I'm completely a metalhead. But I've also listened to a lot of pop and rock and funk and jazz and classical and country and all these different styles of music. And I do remember, some of my friends are like, "What are you doing listening to Toto?" And I'd always look at them and I'd think, because it's amazing, these are great musicians, great songs. And Toto's definitely made up of all these legendary, LA studio and session players, Jeff Porcaro, Steve Lukather, the whole band, David Paich, all of them. And it's really interesting to not only listen to what Toto did, but then you start cycling around and noticing, wow, okay, they recorded with Steely Dan and Boz Scaggs and all these different artists. And with a band that's been around as long as Toto has, they've been around since the late 70s. And, they have, 15 studio albums, a bunch of, live albums and compilations and greatest hits. They have a lot of music, just the band. And then if you start filtering around through their studio and session work, if you're focusing on somebody like Lukather, you can go down that rabbit hole, and there's hundreds and hundreds of songs where he's, playing rhythm, or he's playing lead, or he's playing all the guitar parts. And then also Lukather has a bunch of solo albums too, and those are great. And I talked about those briefly during his Three for All. But the album Candyman by Steve Lukather is brilliant. It's dedicated to Jeff Porcaro. And then also Porcaro's last album with Toto, Kingdom of Desire. Kingdom of Desire is brilliant, and it's a great album. The opening, that's the very famous Hold the Line, of course, from their debut album. And I even included the keyboard or piano part. And I moved it down an octave. I think it's actually, the correct pitch would be up here somewhere. But I just moved it down, an octave lower just to make it a little bit easier to segue or transition into the chords. So once again there, the keyboard part. Basically F sharp minor, an A over C sharp, and then a D6, and then E major, E sus4, E major. But the very first time I ever played or learned this song, it was a long time ago. I think I was still in high school, and I was playing with a keyboardist or a piano player, and he had the sheet music. And I'd heard the song, but I'd never tried to play it before. And so when I looked at the sheet music, I just looked at the chords, above the piano part. And it literally had, F sharp, A over C sharp, D to E. And that's what I learned, which is this. So that second chord, that's F sharp, an F sharp 5, and then an A over C sharp, to a D5, to an E. And there's a little bit of a debate or kind of an argument over this, rhythm part. And that's the way I originally learned it, from the sheet music, like this. But the other way I've seen it written and I've seen it performed is just moving to a C sharp power chord, which would sound like this. So it's slightly different, between the C sharp power chord and that A over C sharp. So now I'm going to play them back to back and see if you can actually tell the difference. Very subtle difference between the two. And I even went through and kind of found some live footage of Toto. And I've seen Toto in concert, actually, a long time ago. It was the Kingdom of Desire tour. That would have been 1993. Simon Phillips on drums. That was a killer show. But I did find a recent performance of Toto playing this. And you could see Lukather's hand. And it did look like he was playing a C-sharp power chord. But then I found a really old, kind of concert footage. And on that, it looked like he was actually moving between that A over C sharp to that D power chord. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, I've seen it written different ways. I originally learned it, as an A over C sharp. And really the only way I guess we could actually find out is if we could sit down and just ask Steve, like, dude, did you play a C sharp power chord or is that A over C sharp? Because, I can hear it either way, and it does kind of blur between those two chords. So we can argue and we can fight, we can, go out in the street and scrap and start fighting over it. But I'm actually hearing A over C sharp. But then sometimes I think I hear that C sharp power chord. So maybe Lukather's changing it. Maybe the first time it's A over C sharp, and then the second time it's C sharp. I don't know. But may the force be with you as far as figuring out exactly what he was playing. The next example comes from the song Till the End, and this is from their Fahrenheit album. And it looks and sounds like this. Right there you can see we're doing like an E power chord. And then now we're doing a D over F sharp. So I'm doing it like this. And then you're going to move over to a C power chord or just C5. And then down to an A power chord or A5. And then he does this kind of quick single note. And that gets him right back into that E again. The next example is kind of an obscure Toto, hidden track, but this is Carmen from the album Isolation, and it looks like this. And right there you can see we're just kind of playing off that E power chord. And that's kind of just walking up like E minor pentatonic right there. And he kind of does like a little slight pinch on that G, on the low E string there on the 3rd fret. And at the end of that riff, he just ends on an A sus2. Now, ironically, this riff reminds me of another Toto song, the song Drag Him to the Roof, which is from Tambu. And that's, a completely different decade, completely different era of the band. But Drag Him to the Roof sounds like this. It's based around almost the same idea. It's just, a little different. I know the first time I heard Drag Him to the Roof, I was like, hey, that reminds me of Carmen. And then I compared the two and noticed, he's almost starting it the same way. But I really love his, kind of quick and, palm muted and kind of, just busy single note lines mixed in with chords too. And sometimes he's, playing the single note lines based around chords. The next example comes from the song Stay Away, which is from the album, the 7th one. That would have been like, 1988, somewhere around there. And this is the intro, and it looks and sounds like this. the intro part, he's basically doing a really high G power chord down to an F, and then he hits that a couple times and slides back into that G. And then he basically removes this D note, and if you keep this, that's basically going to function as C, like a C5, or a C5 over G, because G is not your lowest note, but that's still going to function as a C chord. And then just go back to that F again. And I really like that, where you've got, 3 chords, but you're really just kind of playing around with 2 shapes, this and this, right? And I like that. It's kind of efficient, and you've got, kind of an easy transition between those chords. When the verse starts, it basically kicks in and his guitar tone's a lot heavier, and then it jumps down an octave with these power chords. And then the verse starts. So it really grabs your attention because you hear this higher pitched, intro, and then the verse comes in and just punches you right in the face with those lower power chords. It's very, very effective too. If you're songwriting, maybe write something in a different, register or higher pitch, and then you can go lower and really, kind of deliver it. Or you could do it the other way around. You could start lower, and then maybe when the verse starts, you can kind of move into a higher, variation. Just kind of play around with ideas like that. And that's one big thing from learning, some music and kind of tapping into some of these Lukather secrets. He's a brilliant, part writer, arranger, songwriter, obviously, he's a great musician. Okay, the next example comes from the song Never Enough, which is from Kingdom of Desire, and this is a really cool guitar part. And obviously you can see he's using his fingers and kind of plucking through those chords. And he's really just moving from a D to an E power chord, and then the D to an A over C sharp. So there's that hold the line chord again. And then it's an open string, A and D, which is going to function as a D5. And then the second fret, A and D, which is going to function as an E5. So it's really crafty. Second time through, he's going to play a partial B minor to a partial A major, and then do that D to E kind of tag at the end. Really cool guitar part. Next example is the title track from Kingdom of Desire, the song Kingdom of Desire, and it looks and sounds like this. Steve's playing partial chords and kind of allowing it to ring over that D root note. Now this song's technically tuned down a half step, so when you hear the album version, it's going to sound like E flat. It's going to sound like this. Something like that. So keep in mind, he is technically playing in the key of E, but it's E flat because of the way he's tuned. And I didn't really want to, tune down a half step just for this one example. So I just moved it to the key of D. I don't want to confuse anybody, but the album version is an E flat, which sounds like that. And all I did was just arrange it to D. Same guitar part, just a different pitch. It's a half step lower technically. Really what's happening there with the chords, that's going to function as a D7 sus4, and then a D5, D minor 7, Go back to that D7 sus4 again. And then this would be a D minor sharp 5, which is really cool, you know, and I love that kind of assortment of chords over that same root note. And it's kind of influencing, you know, the way those partial chords sound. Now, if you tune down a half step and you play it, you know, in E flat, the way the album is. And keep in mind, he wasn't tapping that root note. I'm just doing that so you can hear it in the right key. But the chords would be the exact same thing. Just move, you know, the chords I just labeled to E flat instead of D. Last example comes from the song Orphan, and this is from a more recent album from Toto. This is from 14, which I think it was written in Roman numerals, but that's their 14th, you know, studio album. And the first time I ever heard this song, I immediately knew who it was. I was like, oh my gosh, this is Toto. And then it just rocked my socks. You know, I thought, okay, this song is amazing. And I really do like this tune. The intro part, it's kind of clean and really slow and just picked through this 4-chord progression. And I found a way to fret and kind of arrange the notes to where it's kind of a fret hand challenge. So even though it's kind of an easy guitar part and it's really slow, there's a challenging or demanding way that you can play it like this. There, that's going to function as like a D add 11, and then this is an A13 technically, just by kind of opening up, you know, that A string right there, and then this is going to be a B5 flat 13, and then a G major 7 kind of implied. So right there you can see I'm really just using my third finger and holding that F sharp down the whole time. I'm using my pinky to grab the D note, and then I'm releasing, you know, my pinky to open up that A string. I'm using my index finger to grab the B note there on the 2nd fret, and then using my my middle finger to grab the 3rd fret on the low E to grab that G. So there's this, you know, 4-chord progression. Fretting it like that, and then, you know, when you pick through it, it's a good challenge for your fret hand. And you're basically working on finger independence. You know, you're leaving one finger down while you're adding or removing, you know, a different finger, and that involves, you know, strength and dexterity. And just, you know, this kind of fret hand ability to be able to do that. And finger independence is really important to work on. And, you know, guitar parts and exercises and little movements like that will help you get used to, you know, kind of working your fingers independently. All right, that's going to wrap this look at the Chords of Toto. And once again, I'm a big fan. You know, I love Steve Lukather. I've, you know, been listening to Toto since I was in high school. And there's just always been something uplifting and kind of spiritual and melodic and musical, you know, throughout all of their albums and all their songs, and all the band members too. You know, they're all, you know, just exceptional musicians. And you know, Jeff Porcaro is one of my favorite drummers, and I'm not really a drummer. I'm a guitarist, but I'm a guitarist that loves drums. You know, I wish I was a drummer, or at least I just, you know, I like watching and listening and playing with drummers. But, you know, Porcaro definitely was a legend, you know, big time. And Lukather, you know, is a living legend. You know, he has definitely been all around the globe, you know, recording, touring, performing, you know, playing, teaching, all sorts of things. And a very exciting, you know, and legendary guitarist for sure. So leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.